The Scream social media pages are becoming active again, sharing with us our first official logo for the upcoming film, which looks pretty dang sick. In honor of this, and in hopes that we get a trailer sometime soon, fingers crossed this month, baby, let's do a little bit of a recap on all of the big Scream 7 updates from this past month. Now, let's get into it.
What's your favorite scary movie?
We may have just found out when the Scream 7 trailer is going to drop, potentially alongside one of the biggest releases of the year. Also, in a new interview with Mason Gooding, the actor reveals an interesting tidbit about the upcoming installment that may have fans of the original trilogy excited. Now, let's get into it. Starting off this Scream 7 update with one of my favorite members of the Core 4, let's talk a bit about Chad Meeks Martin, the cyborg who can take 1 million stabs to the chest with ease. I'm so excited to see him get eviscerated again here in Scream 7 and then get wheeled out on a cart into an ambulance given the thumbs up. Hashtag keep Chad alive no matter what, baby. Chatting with Us Weekly, Mason Gooding talked about Scream 7 saying, "I'll say the movie is domestic. I'll say it's homely and unconventional." So pause for 2 seconds there. I don't think Mason meant to say homely there, which means unattractive. I think he means that this movie is gonna feel like returning to home, going back to its roots of this franchise. Scream 6 is arguably a spin-off. It feels so different from a lot of the other flicks in this franchise, so I understand describing it as maybe homey rather than homely. Unless he's just straight up admitting that this movie is trash 6 months before it releases, let's hope not. He goes on to praise director Kevin Williamson, saying, "From a creative standpoint, Kevin is the dream because he created that world. So having a level of understanding and world building and in background and ethos of just the concept in general of Scream was incredibly gratifying and also led to a greater understanding of the lifeblood of the series as a whole." Gooding calls Chad just one piece of the greater machination of the Scream universe, and goes on to continue glazing Kevin Williamson too, saying that Williamson's direction is an all-encompassing addition to the movies that can hit on all those tones and world-building elements that you maybe hope for in a sequel or just in a franchise in general. Kevin certainly has the ethos and even the passion to helm this franchise, which makes him a great candidate, but the question I feel more so is, does he have the directing wits to do it? It's a very different creative job rather than writing the script. Directors should bring a script to life rather than actually just create things on the spot. We all know he can write a mean script, but what does his directing look like? I guess watch Teaching Miss Tingle if you want an answer to that. This movie is clearly going for the feel of the original trilogy, as Mason is basically saying here, putting Sydney in the lead role again and setting it back in small town USA. I really hope this return to form works for the series that desperately needs a win right now. Homey, warm, and nostalgic are all the feelings that this movie should be trying to strike. Our last small update for Scream today revolves around Fortnite, baby. Rumor has it it's coming to the Fortnitemares event this fall alongside the Jason universe. Allegedly, you'll be able to play as both Ghostface and Sidney Prescott. I honestly haven't played much of Fortnite since like chapter 2, and it's just not my cup of tea much these days. I still can't believe I paid real adult money for the Michael Myers skin. Finally, our biggest update comes from third-party source viewer Anon over on Twitter when a fan asked for an update on the Scream 7 trailer drop. Viewer Anon responded by saying that it will drop alongside The Running Man this November. Interestingly enough though, literally as I was writing the script for today's video, that release date for The Running Man specifically changed. They pushed it back a week, likely because The Running Man doesn't want any of the smoke that Predator Badlands is certainly going to give it. Good move, Paramount, you don't want that competition, trust me. These are two sci-fi thrillers. They're in the same genre, so they're gonna give each other competition, and Predator Badlands is definitely the movie that more people are excited for right now. So if this is true, we will likely see the Scream 7 trailer, at least for the first time on the big screen on November 14th. I wouldn't expect it any earlier than that. I know some people were hoping for an October release, maybe alongside the Black Phone 2, but it seems more likely that Paramount will drop it alongside a big release in that same time frame. The Running Man, also coming from Paramount, would be that release. I find it interesting that this is a little earlier than the trailer drops for both Screams 5 and 6. The marketing campaign is kicking off 2 weeks earlier than the previous films that really had 3 months to promote before their respective releases. I think both Spyglass Media and Paramount are a little nervous that the narrative is still negative regarding the upcoming Scream film. They're definitely looking to move past those controversies so that they can make bank on one of their flagship series. It wouldn't be the weirdest thing in terms of movie marketing ever to drop that trailer earlier. I think it will only benefit Scream 7. I mean, look at Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. They released the trailer for that almost a year before that one drops. It almost feels like they're trying to recreate the success from Barbenheimer Oppenheimer, and interestingly enough, if they push back the release of Paw Patrol 3, they could do that, have the Pawdacy double feature. Sorry about that stupid sidebar, back to Scream. I know everyone is worried about Scream 7 with the generalized behind-the-scenes drama, or the fact that the Cat in the Hat movie is releasing on the same day next February, but I promise you, this movie has nothing to worry about. General audience members will show up just like they did with 5 and 6 despite the drama, and the series has such die-hard fans. I can't see this movie tanking Scream 4 style. That is, as long as it has a good marketing campaign just like the last two flicks. Today's update is telling me that it likely will. Remember, kiddos, the simultaneous release of Rio the same day as Scream 4 all the way back in 2011 was not the reason why that movie didn't do so well at the box office. It was because of poor marketing.
You should have seen the look on your face.
I can't tell you how many Scream fans I have talked to who didn't even know Scream 4 was in theaters until Easter weekend. Bill Hader's animated Cat in the Hat movie is certainly not going to stop Ghostface. Oh no.
What are you doing here?
Linda.
Between the return of a ton of beloved characters that are probably dead, but maybe they're not, and the fact that Scream 7 has the word Scream in the title, this movie's definitely going to make money. I would bet my bottom dollar on it. I'm probably gonna use that bottom dollar to go see this movie next February. We don't need to be worried about that at all. What we do need to be worried about, however, is will this actually be a good Scream movie? Rehauling scripts doesn't always bode very well. We'll see if this one's any good on February 27th of next year.
I won't sleep until he's in the ground.
It's been a rocky road covering Scream 7, but today we may have some very good news. Since the film was announced shortly after the 6th installment, Melissa Barrera was axed from the project, with her on-screen sister, played by Jenna Ortega, exiting shortly after. Then former director Chris Landon dropped out after getting death threats from folks who call themselves fans. The script was then rehauled by Guy Busick to hopefully save face, putting the focal point on Sidney Prescott once again. While I have had my doubts about Scream 7, considering that a lot of the big updates point to this one being another run-of-the-mill, sort of boring in my opinion, requel, today's update actually gives me some faith in this new movie. It seems like Scream 7 may actually be keeping its promise of focusing on the character of Sidney Prescott, opposed to splitting the focus between multiple characters. So in today's video, let's talk about why this update may be the most important one yet. So recently we had an update from a reliable third-party source, Jude Jarjora, where he revealed that Sidney Prescott had over 40 minutes of screen time in the 7th installment, with Gale Weathers hitting the 20-minute mark. A few things here. Jude is a third-party source, but one that I personally trust, especially after having a good conversation with the fella. Take it with a grain of salt, of course, but I personally believe this. If this is true, that means that Sidney Prescott would have a similar amount of screen time to that of the original film, where she was undoubtedly the focus. Obviously, quality is more important than quantity, especially in this situation, but going back and watching some of the other Scream sequels where there's less and less of Sidney Prescott, but they still have a focus on this character, it makes me scratch my head why they don't do more with her, why some of the subplots in some of those movies are more interesting than what's going on with Sidney at times. Scream 3 is a great example of this, where Sidney is hardly in the first half of the film, only to dominate the back half. It just kind of feels like the script went through multiple rewrites, which it did. With the character having that much screen time, I feel like Sidney Prescott could actually be the focal point again, opposed to splitting the focus between multiple characters throughout your runtime, which is something I've noticed just doesn't really work about especially Scream 5. That's a problem I'm so worried Scream 7 is once again going to have. This has been a major talking point on the channel since the beginning of this production, that it would once again find ways to shoehorn characters into a narrative where they may be considered unnecessary. The impetus for shoehorning in a bunch of characters that may feel unnecessary has almost always been nostalgia. Scream 7 may have that on its side this time around if all of those returning characters are just utilized for a flashback that pushes this new narrative, and then Sidney Prescott is your focal point with a bunch of supporting cast. There's nothing wrong with that, but when you're constantly changing the focus from Sam Carpenter to Dewey Riley to Gale Weathers to Sidney Prescott, it's just chaotic. Scream 5 especially suffered from that. There were so many times in that 5th entry when Sam Carpenter just did not get enough time on screen for the old fans to really buy into her. For me personally, it wasn't until the end when she stabbed the out of Richie Kirsch that I was really sold on her. Part of that is also the way they introduced this character. I mean, she's just kind of working at a bowling alley. That's not super interesting. We hear her talking about having a drug problem, and listen, kids, don't do drugs. That's very bad. But it would have been so cool to see Sam Carpenter ripping lines or something to start this movie off. It would have sold me on the character. Think Maxine in X. Maybe don't do exactly that, but something cool. Drugs are not cool. That's not what I'm trying to say. The film seemed to be more concerned at times with doing interesting things with the legacy characters, which it was successful at. Killing Dewey is one of the most upsetting things in the entire Scream franchise. I love it. But this update actually has me excited for Scream 7, telling me they could be doing something different, something new with the franchise here, with Sidney Prescott as a focal point. To talk a little more in depth about this, I want to revisit Scream 6. It's a film that, in my opinion, pushes the franchise in a new direction, but some Scream fans couldn't get on board with it because it wasn't being done by the legacy characters. Scream 6 features a ton of revolutionary elements, like the earliest Ghostface reveal in the franchise with the most shocking opening since the original, modern yet still nail-biting, tension-fueled sequences like the bodega scene and the ladder crossing, and some of Ghostface's most gnarly kills. What I think left a really sour taste in the mouths of longtime fans is the fact that the murder mystery was treated like an afterthought. Scream 6 was more concerned about shocking you with the way that it broke up the formula rather than a big Ghostface reveal at the end, which I personally understand, but I also get why people weren't on board with that either. I do think, however, that some of the older fans would have gotten into it a little more if it was being handled by the legacy characters rather than a bunch of new kids. Like, imagine if Scream 6 starred Sidney Prescott somehow. I think more fans would have been on board in that case. For some, Scream is like Scooby-Doo. If it's not Mystery Incorporated solving the crimes, one may lose interest despite an actually really cool story potentially unfolding on screen. I think if Scream 7 is a better version of Scream 6, reinventing a lot of modern horror tropes with the legacy cast and characters, that balance won't feel too revolutionary for the longtime fans and still keep the interest of newcomers because it's actually hitting on stuff being talked about in the genre right now. There's a chance that Scream 7 could be getting into something similar to that with today's update, and that is what has me so excited for the film now. That's what Scream should be doing, not regurgitating formulas they've already gone through like a lot of other horror films out there. I Know What You Did Last Summer just did the requel thing and proved that it's stale, capital S stale by now. Doing it again in Scream 7 will not work. Now, a big comment I've gotten a lot on the page recently is, Jake, why are you being so negative when it comes to Scream 7? It's a real simple thing. I just feel like Scream isn't being handled properly. We've talked about a lot of the things I love about Scream in today's video already. Sidney Prescott, the Scooby-Doo feel, but maybe the most important thing, like the thing that put this franchise on the map in the first place that I personally think every sequel should try their hand at, is the punk rock stick it to the man attitude that tries to subvert expectations based on things you already know about other horror franchises. Things that you've come to expect about slasher movies, Scream is gonna do something different.
Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
Have an aneurysm, why don't you?
A lot of the updates that we've gotten regarding Scream 7 just makes me feel like this franchise is now following the rules all of a sudden, where it never has before. In the original Scream, Randy sets the table, he puts all the rules down, Sidney breaks a ton of them, and still survives. That's like the whole point. Lately, it just feels like this franchise is following the rules and doing what every other franchise is doing based on some of the updates. At least that's how it seemed. Bringing back fan favorite characters to sugarcoat your story didn't exactly instill confidence in me during those spoilery updates, and some of the casting has had me scratching my head since it was announced. If you're gonna market a Scream film, be a little more punk rock and fun about it. Why are they just like throwing all these desperate updates out there begging us to come to the theaters, essentially? Nothing put a bad taste in my mouth more than announcing that all of these returning characters were coming back. That's very clearly going to play as a surprise in the film, because of course it is. But with all of these potential detractors, there's a chance that they still might try to push the franchise in a new direction, but finding a balance that works with new and older fans alike. It's a little sad for me to say this, but I think more people would have liked Scream 6 if it were Sidney hiding behind shelves of a bodega while Ghostface stalked her with a shotgun in hand. It all boils down to the Scooby-Doo comparison again. Something interesting might be happening in this new story, but fans are going to be thinking the entire time, what happened to Scooby-Doo? Why is Shaggy not stoned out of his mind right now? Don't do drugs, kids. kids? What if instead of making another passing of the torch flick, which this franchise does not need, Scream 7 analyzes a lot of modern horror tropes through the lens of the legacy character's perspective? That would be a story that would have me absolutely losing my mind. Now, I want to end this by saying that I know a lot of us are very disappointed we're not getting another Carpenter Sisters story here, as am I. But I think Scream 7 could be the catalyst for new creative continuations. Once franchise fans see that applying modern horror techniques and commentary to Scream while also finding a way to make it all fresh again can work, I feel like more people are going to be open to the franchise branching off into new stories and characters. Scream 7 is a film that could prove that this series has the potential to go on forever, constantly analyzing the current state of horror like I know it can. But maybe there are others out there that just need convincing with the legacy characters, something that Scream 6 just couldn't do. I'm excited to see if Scream 7 is actually effective in those regards, but I guess we'll all find out on February 27th of next year. Let's go!
What do you want?
Don't you know history repeats itself?
Hey everybody, so we're gonna do something different today and talk about Scream 7. We haven't done that at all in the last two videos on this page. What are you talking about? We actually have some really exciting updates on the film, including some new behind the scenes photos. We gotta talk about this. I mean, come on. Now let's dive on into this. Cracking open this update, we have some new behind the scenes photos of what I believe to be Sidney Prescott's house. These shots come from the novel Your Favorite Scary Movie: How the Scream Films Rewrote the Rules of Horror from journalist Ashley Cullins. It's said to be giving a ton of fresh new behind the scenes stories about all 7 Scream movies. Oh yeah, I said 7. It even features more behind the scenes photos from this new installment. I think I'm gonna have to pick this bad boy up. More Scream videos coming soon, because you're definitely not sick of these yet. I'm pretty confident that this is Sidney's house for a few reasons that I can't disclose here, but we're also seeing police vehicles in this shot, making me think this could be where the end of the film takes place. It could also be a situation like in Scream 4, where the cops are hanging out outside kind of protecting the house, but honestly, I'm just feeling like this is gonna be our third act setting this time around. I'm telling ya, Ghostface is coming for those kids. A few other little things I noticed in these shots is director Kevin Williamson standing on the porch here, and a light is on in the one window. Could that be a Ghostface robe there? I think I'm just going senile and seeing things. But how cool would it be if we got a scene where Sidney is rushing home after a crazy phone call with Ghostface, runs up to the front porch, sees the light is on in her baby's room, Ghostface's robe goes by the window, and the light goes off? That would be so spooky. My skin is crawling just thinking about it. Ghostface is coming for those kids, man! I don't see any of the actors here though, so my guess is they're getting a lot of expository shots of Sidney's place. Hence all of the crazy lights in the backyard. One of the biggest updates in today's video, however, is that a picture of the Ghostface mask from the new film has been released, and while it might not seem like anything huge, it comes with an interesting little tag. Signed by both Kevin Williamson and Neve Campbell, the mask comes with this little tag that says when it was used at certain points in the film. If we break it down a little bit, you can kind of see where the opening kill happens all the way to the reveal. To me, it looks like scenes 9, 10, and partial scenes of 11 wrap up the opening kill. Scenes 1 through 8 will possibly be the phone call building the tension. Then we're flashing forward to scene 34, where maybe we have a little bit of a chase and a kill. There's a ton of stops and starts just like that until we get to scene 90, which maybe kicks off our third act bloodbath. I'm totally speculating here, but if this is following a typical Scream movie formula, I gotta be close, right? Another thing going around right now from this Ashley Cullins Scream novel is an interview with director Christopher Landon, who was originally going to helm Scream 7 before he received a ton of death threats and the loss of his lead actress. Talking about the tumultuous start to this film's production, Landon said, "They were all screaming at someone who wasn't even on the movie anymore. There were a lot of people who thought I was some sort of villain. That really got in my head. It was painful, and it was painful to lose a dream job in such a sudden and bizarre way. There was no movie anymore. The whole script was about her. I didn't sign on to make a Scream movie, I signed on to make that movie. When the movie no longer existed, I moved on." He goes on to call this the best decision of his life, jumping ship from this series. This, in my opinion, will forever be one of the biggest whiffs of Scream history, losing Christopher Landon as a director. No working director in Hollywood right now would have made a more faithful Scream movie to Mr. Wes Craven than Chris Landon. Most of his filmography is obviously inspired by Wes Craven, movies like Happy Death Day, Freaky, and Drop especially, dude. Chris has even said that Drop is his love letter to Red Eye. I love Kevin Williamson, man, and I'm sure he's made something fun here, but at the end of the day, he's more of a writer than a director. These are two very different creative jobs. Chris has so much more experience directing, and I really hope that one day he gets to make his own Scream movie. I would truly be honored to cover that. Finally, this video right here is making its rounds again of someone filming behind the scenes of a sequence for this upcoming movie that allegedly takes place at a bar. If I'm not mistaken, I believe this was shot at a place called Varner's Restaurant and Tavern, which is also outside of Atlanta, just like a lot of the other filming locations for this new movie. Please don't go there now and harass the staff. I promise you they're not shooting there anymore. What's cool about this video, however, is we can spot two people walking around in Ghostface robes. So are we going to get another double kill where like two Ghostfaces come out and stab somebody to death, or almost to death? Because I wouldn't be complaining about that, not one bit. This is kind of funny too. The rumor is that Mason Gooding and Celeste O'Connor were shooting this sequence, whatever was going on at this bar. Could you imagine if Chad survived two ghost faces twice? Hashtag keep Chad alive, keep the bit going, baby. You can't kill the guy now. He's so hot, he's invincible.
It's as if you don't exist.
That's the idea. Psychos can't kill what they can't find.
The Scream fandom seems to be conflicted on what is going on in this new film based on today's update. Conflicting reports are coming out regarding the brutality of the new film, and Kevin Williamson has dropped some bombshells about choices being made behind the scenes of Part 7. So let's get into this pressure cooker of a Ghostface update. Scream 7 is getting really exciting to talk about again as more and more updates are coming through. A lot of what we're getting into today comes from the new novel from Ashley Cullins called Your Favorite Scary Movie: How the Scream films rewrote the rules of horror, which covers behind-the-scenes stories of all 7 Scream films. Franchise creator Kevin Williamson has even described the book as the definitive story of Scream, a true bible of its history and legacy. The coverage of the new film from the novel is really intriguing and even a little spoilery. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we may be getting into some Scream 7 spoilers in today's video, but thankfully I am saving it for the end of this one, and I will prompt you with a big warning before we get into it. So let's talk about some of the more general but still very juicy details first. Possibly my favorite thing we're gonna talk about here, Scream 7 director Kevin Williamson announces that Scream 6 is his favorite sequel after the original. That brings so much joy to my Scream 6 loving heart. Williamson said of the film, "It was one chase scene after another. It was so wonderful. I thought the set pieces in Scream 6 were awesome and I loved it. Being a part of Screams 5 and 6 has been a blessed experience. With 1 and 2 and 3, I never felt like it was a franchise. They made 4, but 4 didn't do so well. Now with 5 and 6, and knowing that there's going to be a 7, I truly feel like Scream is part of horror history. We of course respect everyone's opinions around here, but I just feel like Scream 6 gets a lot of flack, oftentimes called by Scream fans the worst film ever made. If Scream 6 is the worst film you've ever seen, I highly recommend putting on Day of the Dead 2 Contagium. I promise you it's worse. Scream 6, in my opinion, is one of the most important and intense sequels in the bunch that found a way to expand the lore of Ghostface. Ghostface isn't just somebody going after Sidney Prescott, it's anybody with a killer instinct and some sort of motive.
I just want you to tell me why you think you're doing this. In your words.
We're finishing Richie's film.
I'm excited to see what Kevin does to build off of those ideas, something he clearly digs about the film. I'm predicting that Scream 7 is going to feel a lot like Scream 6, but starring Sidney Prescott, still flourishing with new ideas, but carrying over the legacy cast. That sounds like a recipe for success. Speaking of Sidney, one of the most polarizing quotes from the novel is making waves in the fandom right now. Neve Campbell made a special request regarding 7 that has fans up in arms. In an interview featured in the novel, Kevin discussed working with Campbell again in the lead role, saying Neve wants to go back to the first one and find the suspense and really concentrate on scary and not bloody. She was smart. She goes, "This is the time to do it because we're moving away from New York. We're going back to Sidney's life. This is the time to reset a little bit," and I'm like, yep, let's do it. Now, while that quote is obviously stirring up some drama with the notion of a bloodless Scream film on the horizon, I think people are taking this the wrong way. Many folks are hearing this and thinking that Scream 7 isn't going to be bloody at all. What I think is meant by that quote is they're bringing back the original trilogy chase scenes to this installment, where tension building is the focus over anything else. A slasher film without blood isn't really a slasher film though, is it? I think both Kevin and Nev know that. Also, if they meant no blood and gore at all, or maybe just limited blood and gore, which would still suck, that would really conflict with what Mason Gooding said of the film almost at the top of the year. Back in February, Mason Gooding was on the I've Never Said This Before podcast and talked a little bit about this new film. He said, "This is the most brutal Ghostface I think there's ever been from an anatomically logistical standpoint. There's a lot of blood and viscera, and I feel like Kevin Williamson directing, fans have a lot to look forward to with what we do with these characters." So in my mind, I think this is going to be a marriage of all things great about the entire Scream franchise so far. A best of both worlds scenario, fingers crossed. You'll have the slow burner chases that build the tension like what we saw in the original trilogy, followed with a brutal kill from Mr. Ghostface that feels a little more reminiscent of what we got in 4, 5, and 6. That sounds like a Scream franchise fan's wet dream. This also makes a lot of sense from a creative standpoint too. We're getting a script from the guys who wrote 5 and 6, with the director being the dude that wrote 1, 2, and 4. I think it's safe to speculate that 7 is going to be an amalgamation of ideas from the entire franchise, not just one section of it or the other. On top of all of that, trusted third-party source Jude Jarjora recently posted, "Think Scream 7 isn't violent? Think again." It's character-driven, and in my opinion, the most interesting real Sidney story yet. It's grounded, menacing, and feels like old-school Scream again. Nobody gets stabbed 15 times and walks it off. The gore is earned if it makes sense. Again, all of this sounds like a wonderful balancing act and music to my ears. There's obviously a lot more to Scream than what you get in the typical slasher like bloody kills. There's also some great character work and some sharp commentary. Scream is essentially the slasher genre's overachiever, but there are still elementary boxes that every single slasher film needs to check off, and one of those things is nasty kills. Scream 7 better have that covered, or I promise you a lot of fans are going to be turned away from it. If the people making Scream 7 know what they're doing, they're going to give us some drawn-out, tension-fueled chase sequences that are followed up by a brutal, disgusting kill, where hopefully Ghostface is choking somebody out with their own organs. As Martin Scorsese would say, now that's cinema. Now, unfortunately, we do have to end today's rather positive video with a bit of a sour note. Mr. Kevin Williamson has given a quote to this new novel from Ashley Cullens that I feel shouldn't be public knowledge. This feels like a major spoiler for Scream 7, so if you don't want to know how this movie ends essentially, maybe turn off the video now. Potential Scream 7 spoilers ahead, you have been warned. Talking about the ending of Scream 7 essentially, director Kevin Williamson says, "I have made it very clear, I think publicly too, that Sidney has been through so much torment, and she has been through so much trauma that to give her anything less than a happy ending is mean. It's just sacrilegious." While I both agree with Kevin Williamson, and I know that this has been a public statement from both Kevin and Nev before in the past, I just wish he wouldn't have doubled down on it here. This is a sentiment that I agree with, yes, but things that were said a long time ago and may have changed moving into Scream 7. I don't want to know Sidney's fate before I get into this new movie. That tells me how this whole film is going to wrap up. I mean, I think most fans could have guessed that this movie was going to end happily, but why would you come outright and say that? That to me just kills any tension involving the character of Sidney Prescott, who is the lead of this movie. This is textbook shooting yourself in the foot. Now every time I see Sidney getting attacked or chased in Scream 7, I'm just going to be thinking about this quote rather than being engulfed in tension. That's just no fun at all. Throughout the slow marketing process of Scream 7, there have been hints that Sidney could be in danger and may not live through this movie either. There have been many quotes I've talked about on this page where we've been talking about how the legacy characters aren't even safe this time around. Again, while this argument is something that's been teased to us in many other Scream films before in the past, I still feel it's very necessary. The silver lining to all of this though is maybe the tension building in Scream 7 is going to focus on the rest of Sidney's family instead. Hopefully the tension here is focused more on the danger her kids are in rather than Sidney herself. That second choice husband of hers is likely to die in this movie, let's be honest, and we already know that Ghostface is going to be chasing around Isabel May at some point in the flick. Both of these characters could still totally die. That is absolutely not off the table. Maybe Sidney is playing this protector role throughout the film where yes, she's the lead, but the tension is focused more on the other characters. There is still the danger of losing loved ones, which means we can still build some tension and put our characters in dire situations. Regardless of that final update, I still am very excited for Scream 7. This is a movie that was always going to be a challenge to begin with, and I'm dying to see what they've cooked up here on February 27th of next year.
Someone is playing a deadly game.
It all began with a scream over 911.
Today we have a really exciting Scream 7 update regarding the bangin' score for the new film done by returning composer Marco Beltrami, as well as a theory on the supposed secret cameo that this film is still yet to announce. Now let's get into it. So kicking off this video with such a positive note, we got a really exciting update on Scream 7 today regarding Marco Beltrami, the returning composer from the original film. He's the guy that composed the iconic sounds of that original movie. He's back doing the music for Scream 7. Let's take a listen to what he's working on. So obviously you can tell from just that little excerpt I was able to put into this video that it's a new updated version of Sidney's Lament, but doesn't it sound a little bit like Bring Me to Life by Evanescence? Have those two tracks always sounded so similar, or am I just going crazy? Siphoning through Marco's post, it's also really interesting to note that we learned some of the other track titles, one including Mrs. Evans' Lament, which is obviously the updated version of Sidney's Lament here. It's called Mrs. Evans' Lament because her husband is Mark Evans. It's no longer Mark Kincaid, not Patrick Dempsey anymore, unfortunately. I'm still salty about that, by the way. Hashtag bring back Patty Demps. And a more intense piece called School Drama that will likely play over Kyle Winter's death. This is an actor we just found out about recently playing a minor role in the film. Rumor has it Ghostface is gonna go after him backstage at the high school's Performing Arts Center, as he is also in a play with Sidney's daughter. I covered that whole rumor about Kyle Winters in a short this past week.
This is take 4. Here we go.
I am really digging this change up in composers. No shade absolutely whatsoever to Mr. Brian Tyler, who did an excellent job with Screams 5 and 6, but there's something about the iconic sounds of the original that I just really missed in those last two entries. I actually really enjoyed some of the tracks from Scream 6 that I think was a major improvement over the more atmospheric stuff that we got in Scream 2022, but overall, I think the best music from this entire franchise comes from that original film. It's cool and all, but it's not as cool as this sick-ass motherfucking raccoon. I mean, that guy's pretty sick, am I right? The big topic I wanted to get into today, however, is a secret cameo still yet to be announced for Scream 7. Who could it be? There has been a lot of discussion all over the internet regarding this throughout the entire summer, so let's break down the whole conversation. Rumors have been circulating that on top of the announced cameos of Matthew Lillard, Scott Foley, and David Arquette, that there would also be another returning cast member from Scream's past. Some were even speculating that Jamie Lee Curtis could appear in the new film, but that rumor has been debunked. That actually bums me out a little bit. I would have loved to have seen Laurie Strode and Sidney Prescott joining forces to fight evil. Some of the big names being tossed around are Skeet Ulrich, Liev Schreiber, and Lynn McCree, considering another rumor that the opening scene will take place in a flashback to Maureen Prescott's murder all the way back in 1995. Billy Loomis, Cotton Weary, and Maureen herself would have to be involved in this sequence. There's also a rumor going around that we're going back to Woodsboro in this new flick, all things that I personally believe. These characters would have to be involved if that's the route that they've chosen to go down. While I am totally banking on some sort of sick Halloween Kills-esque flashback, I don't think that that's our secret cameo. Reliable third-party source Jude Jarjora has teased, if you think all the Scream 7 cameos have been announced, think again. There's still one unannounced legacy face returning from the original 4 films. No, it's not Skeet Ulrich. He posted this using an edited picture from Scream 6, where Agent Reed and Detective Bailey are looking at a board with all of the previous ghost faces. Photoshopped in, however, is a shot of Angelina Tyler, one of the many actors and actresses from Stab 3. This is where it gets interesting interesting. Jude also tweeted alongside that, "I found this pic on Google and didn't even notice Angelina was edited in, so it probably means nothing, unless it doesn't." If you're wondering why would they involve this character in the new film's narrative, well, there's yet again another really interesting fan theory that may be brought to life here in the 7th entry. Many have pointed out that Scream 3's finale wouldn't have been spatially possible with just one killer, Roman, hiding out in the basement for some parts of this, leading some folks to believe that our red herring here, Angelina Tyler, was actually a secret accomplice. Roman might have just killed her off before the big reveal to clean house, very similar to what Mrs. Loomis did to Mickey in part 2. Debbie was really only using Mickey as a means to an end. I've always really liked this theory because I think it works really well with Scream 3. Angelina is super suspicious the entire time and even has that creepy encounter with Sidney in the bathroom on the studio lot. Sid has gotta stay out of public bathrooms during Ghostface encounters. Nothing good ever happens in there. So did Scream 7 bring back Emily Mortimer during the production to reveal that Angelina Tyler was Roman's accomplice the entire time in Scream 3? I think that would be dope as a longtime fan, but how does that affect the story of the 7th installment? My guess is that someone else was involved in the original murder of Maureen Prescott that kicked this whole thing off. We know now because of the events of Scream 3 that Roman was involved, but if Angelina Tyler was his accomplice, she might have been there too. Maybe whoever this other person is that knew about the murder the entire time, their secret is about to come out. That's why they're forced to go Ghostface 30 years later. That could explain the wait. So no, I don't think it's gonna be one of those situations where Angelina is still alive this whole time secretly, because that wouldn't make any sense, right? I think she's just gonna show up and confirm a really cool fan theory that honestly would enhance the viewing experience of Scream 3, because why the hell not? We already know that Scream 7 is gonna be super fan servicey, maybe way more than even the last installment. We're getting the gang back together for Scream 7, might as well throw a few more folks in there. I mean, we got Matthew Lillard, we got David Arquette, we got Scott Foley, we likely have Skeet Ulrich and maybe even Liev Schreiber.
Fuck it!
But maybe the most important thing to realize about Scream 7 is that because of Jay and Silent Bob's cameo in Scream 3, this film is part of the Askewniverse. Another film that's a part of the Askewniverse is Dogma, a movie that came out a year before Scream 3 and had Alanis Morissette as God. So that means that anytime Ghostface scores a kill in Scream 7, just know that that person's soul is being judged by the 90s ironic singer. As Amy Lee from Evanescence once said, "Without a soul, oh, my spirit's sleeping somewhere cold, until you find it there and lead it back home."
No! God, please, no! No! No!
Scream fans cannot catch a break, man. It's been another very rough weekend for Scream 7, as basically the entire opening scene has leaked online. So as you guys know, the point of this page is not to spoil movies. I'm not here to just throw out all the spoilers for a flick, even though they are readily available anywhere you go online. I have seen them on every single platform imaginable. In this video, I don't plan on going through everything that we just learned about the opening scene, because frankly, that's just not the point of this page. I don't want to spoil movies. I want to build excitement for upcoming flicks, because I am excited for Scream 7, even though I just had the opening scene completely spoiled. There is one thing I will share about it in today's video, which is the location of said opening scene. If you don't want to know that, however, I would recommend skipping this video. I will not be getting into the who or how this scene ultimately wraps up, which are obviously two very big portions of it if you've had it spoiled for yourself. One more time though, I will talk about the location of the opening scene. If you do not want to know that, I would highly recommend skipping this video. Now, just like I said in the opening, I don't plan on talking about who is actually getting gutted here, because I just feel like that takes away from the overall murder mystery and any theories we could concoct until basically the movie comes out in February. Where's the fun in that? But let's talk a little bit about that location, where this opening scene is going to take place, and how I think that's going to influence the rest of the movie. So one more time, spoilers ahead, you have been warned. So according to this leak, the opening scene of Scream 7 is going to take place at 261 Turner Lane, but not during a flashback, in the present day. I heard this a while ago from an anonymous source, and I was trying to keep it a secret up until that release date, but unfortunately now it is just out there wild running about. I knew about the location, but I did not know it was going to be present day, making me think, oh, this is probably going to be some sort of flashback to like 1995 Woodsboro before the events of the original flick. I feel okay with sharing the location, because I think what's interesting about this is we can start to kind of talk about what Ghostface's motive this time around is. If he or she Freddy is going back to Stu's house, obviously he has to be connected to the past, which is something we've already speculated a ton on this page. The movie is a return to form. We're focusing on Sidney again. I think it has to be something that ultimately goes back to the events of the 1996 attacks. This is just more confirmation of that. So yes, I think Ghostface is motivated by something that happened in the past, but I know I'm gonna get this comment. I do not think it's Stu Macher who is still alive. Here's the thing about all this. We already know that Scream 8 is in the works based on that Production Weekly report. Why would they kill the momentum of the Stu is alive crowd by actually bringing him back? That would be one of the biggest mistakes this franchise could ever make. As long as you have characters in universe theorizing that maybe Stu could still be alive, you'll have people argue that, oh, that's a good reason for why he's still out there somewhere. That will drive an entire demographic of people to continue to see these movies. But the moment you bring him back, that's when maybe that entire crowd loses interest. I cannot stress this enough. That would be one of the biggest mistakes that they could make, to just completely stomp that out. The studio obviously wants to make more Scream films considering how profitable the last two were, and 7's on the way with 8 after that. They're probably gonna do this Kirby spin-off we've been talking about, and a Scream 9, and a Scream 10, and a Scream 11. Let's just be real here. Some people don't want to hear that, but this is a franchise that can endure. It has a lot of fans, and even younger people are really vibing with it too. This thing could go on forever. It's a cash cow for them, and one of the reasons to come back is to see Matthew Lillard potentially involved, and he has been involved in many of the sequels, including this one. Why not just keep bringing back Matthew as like some sort of spirit or whatever, or maybe some sort of flashback that connects to the new events of the next movie that they make or whatever. That on top of the fact that Scream films are not Marvel flicks, where death means literally nothing. Death is final for characters in this series, and the moment that that stops is the moment that a lot of people are going to be turned away. Kirby Reed is the only character that you can argue that they've brought back, but Wes Craven has even tweeted about how maybe she was still alive. Bringing back Kirby Reed was a way of honoring Wes Craven. Bringing back Stu Macher is just dumb fan service. The moment that death doesn't mean anything in this franchise is when the series goes from thoughtful popcorn movie to mindless cash grab. I'd hate to see that happen to a franchise that, as it stands right now, is maybe the very best slasher series out there. Dewey's death, for instance, was an insanely emotional moment, and one of the very best scenes in the entire franchise thus far. To take something like that away and make it mean nothing by bringing him back would sour one of the best things about Scream 5. Scream is such an effective slasher series because it does something that most other slashers don't even really care to do, building up characters across multiple movies, and sometimes giving them a fitting death when their arc is over. Don't rip away one of those crucial elements to this series just for like a minute of fan service. I would bet my bottom dollar that the killer is somebody connected to the original events of the 1996 murders, like maybe Leslie Macher, Stu's sister. It's still pretty soap opera-y, but it's not as bad as completely laying waste to this franchise by saying that Stu Macher's death means nothing. And mind you, that's one of the most important deaths in this entire franchise. That would undo so much of what has happened in the sequels that are all just a straight line narrative. There is one more little inkling of very spoilery information that I know about Scream 7 that I got from an anonymous source that may or may not have worked on the film. It makes me think that dead ghost faces are not coming back to life in this upcoming flick. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm like a 75. I'm a cool 75% on that. That's all I'm gonna say about it. I'm bummed that this pretty sick sounding opening scene has been spoiled for me. Don't go digging online, you'll find it, but I'm still excited to see it on February 27th of next year, as well as seeing that trailer likely come this November.
Do you like scary movies?
Scream 7's marketing campaign has begun. Now let's get into our peanut butter and chocolate flavored update. So last night, a Scream 7 Reese's peanut butter... Why did I say it like that? So last night, a Scream 7 Reese's peanut butter ad was spotted on TikTok, and it's the first bit of marketing, technically, we've gotten for the upcoming meta slasher.
Never split up peanut butter and chocolate.
Peanut butter and chocolate is pretty cool, but have you guys ever mixed peanut butter and salami together? Try before you deny.
Try before you deny.
This on top of the fact that the Scream social media pages have been a little more active, like the occasional story post on Instagram, that sort of thing. That tells me that the marketing campaign has basically begun. We're getting an extended marketing campaign for Scream 7. Why is that, you might ask? So first of all, with both Screams 5 and 6, we had about 3 months of marketing between the first time we saw a trailer to when that movie actually released. Both of those movies did really well in the box office doing that sort of campaign. And as you guys remember, if you've been following the this page for a long time, the marketing campaigns for 5 and 6 were explosive. Lots of crazy events were happening, like ghost faces popping up in the middle of nowhere, stalking people at gas stations, for instance. There was also an Airbnb event before Scream 5 released where you could stay at Stu's house, like the actual location, and David Arquette was there. Could you imagine hanging out with Dewey at the Mocker residence? That's awesome. Whoever got to do that, I'm super jealous. But now we're doing double that with this movie, and the reason I think that is because Scream 7 has obviously had a lot of bad press within the last 2 years. Between the controversial firings, death threats towards the original director, a bunch of script rewrites, and a lot of drama, there's been some not so great things happening behind the scenes of Scream 7. It makes sense that the studio wants to dump like double the amount of cash into the marketing campaign with this one. Paramount and Spyglass want to flip the script essentially. They want fans talking about their cool new marketing stunt rather than the fact that the opening scene just leaked online, which they have not turned a blind eye to. I know they know this. That's my hope, at least. You can have bad press with a movie and still turn out a good product. It happens all the time. Take Final Destination Bloodlines, for instance. This is a movie that was nowhere near as controversial as what Scream 7 has ultimately turned into, but it did go through multiple script rewrites and a ton of different writers were thrown at that project. Yet, it turned into a super successful new entry. In fact, the most successful entry in the entire Final Destination franchise, with some of the best reviews, some of the greatest moments, I think, in the entire franchise too. That's more subjective, but I think most Final Destination fans would agree. Hey, it's better than the Final Destination. I think we can all agree on that. But I'm just really hoping that this isn't a situation that is similar to how the DCEU ended, with a very distasteful entry in The Flash. A movie that brought back characters from the past in a very, very unsavory way. They marketed the out of that movie. You couldn't go anywhere like 6 months before that one released without seeing some sort of teaser for it. I don't think it's the same situation as that, though. I really think they're trying to turn the whole thing around with this. They actually have a good product here with Scream 7. Because on the bright side, the plot details that I know about regarding this upcoming entry sound awesome. I've unfortunately had the opening scene spoiled for me, but it does sound pretty cool. No AI-generated babies getting placed into microwaves there. And I'm of course not going to spoil anything here, but I've heard some pretty dang cool things about that third act. They are doing something fresh here, and that makes me really excited. But I do want to make a big point with the end of this video. Yes, I have had some things spoiled for me regarding Scream 7, making some of these crazy videos for you guys. I can't complain. What I will say though is I have no intention of spoiling the movie for you guys before it comes out. Where's the fun in that? The point of this page has always been to build excitement for these highly anticipated upcoming releases, not to spoil them for you guys so that you're just not even surprised when these big things happen on screen. I hope I've done a good job recently in giving you a big warning sign before we got into any potential spoiler. Again, that's not the goal of this page. I know based on the comments I've read from the last few videos that some of you don't care about spoilers. You would rather me talk about these things that have been leaked online, but I just don't want to ruin it for the people that do care. I feel like the majority of fans just want someone to talk Scream with. They don't want the movie spoiled because that takes away that element of surprise. That's like one of the coolest things about seeing a new Scream movie for the first time. So I'm hoping I can lead by example a little bit here. You guys can hopefully do me a big solid by not putting any spoilers in the comment section. If elements from this leaked opening scene get placed in the upcoming trailer, then yeah, then it's public knowledge. We can talk about it all we want. But just for now, let's keep those spoilers just away. Let's keep those leaks not here. Thank you for keeping the reveals hidden and the surprises shocking. Well, at least for now. On February 27th, that all changes, and no worries, my friends, we will definitely have some time to talk spoilers on this page. February 2026 is going to be nuts, or might one say nut butter? Try before you deny, baby.
Maybe it's time someone made a buck reporting your death.
Gale Weathers can't catch a break, man. In the last few Scream movies, she certainly had it rough after nearly pushing up daisies in her lavish apartment in New York City and losing her dewdrop in the previous film. The torment seems to continue for Miss Weathers here in Scream 7.
Listen, in about 2 seconds, I'm gonna revitalize your face with my tarnished brand.
Jude has also talked a bit about this lately, saying Gale comes to town with one of her strongest entrances yet in Scream 7. Spiraling through career struggles girls and tasting her own medicine under cancel culture, she's on the hot seat like never before. She unmasks a key part of the chaos, and her arc is rich and full of substance. Breaking that down a bit, Jude says that her entrance in this new film is one of her best ever, and however you feel about Gale in Scream 6, I think you have to admit that first scene with her was pretty cool. Girl has been punched in the face so many times and never learns. Maybe she will here, however. Her career is struggling and she's facing backlash too, apparently. Could this be because she once again wrote a book about the killings in the previous film?
Somebody was gonna write about it. That's what I do.
Maybe she's finally being outed by the public this time, and not her real-life friends who are also involved in Ghostface murders for basically profiting off of them. Maybe she'll realize she's a controversial figure who is sort of perpetuating the image of Ghostface, leading others to want to do it themselves.
That's a low blow. So was your book.
Jude also says that she unmasks part of the chaos, and it's so hard for me to look at that and not think in a literal sense. Is she taking off one of those Ghostface masks early? I think it would be dope if one of the veterans from this franchise, like Gale Weathers, who have been through this a bunch of different times, hell, even more times than Sidney Prescott, was able to reveal someone's identity halfway through the flick. It's almost kind of surprising that this hasn't happened yet. Sure, Jason Carvey took off his mask to the audience during the opening scene of Scream 6, but no one has bested a Ghostface in combat yet. I feel like if anyone could do it, it's totally Gale Weathers, especially this version of the character who desperately needs a win. After seeing her go through it here, it might be extra satisfying for her to score a major W like that all before the third act. And also, this should go without saying, anything to deviate from the franchise formula that we all know all too well by now. Give a big shock to the audience if you can. If you're someone like me who's worried that Scream 7 is gonna be too rinse and repeat like some previous sequels, Jude confirms the opposite here. He's made a few comments hinting at Gale dying in the upcoming 7th installment, and that the third act differs in structure from previous movies. I've gone on this tirade before, but I honestly think that any character in the Scream franchise can die if it fits the story. Every character has an arc that needs to close eventually. I'd rather see a character die with their boots on than keep coming back to the point where I get sick of them. This happens all the time in major franchises, in fact. Also, on a bit of a real note here, the Scream franchise is likely going to outlive Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox, just like it did the original director of the flick, Wes Craven. Do we really want to see these gold standard Scream characters get off-screen deaths by the time we get to like Scream 15? I don't know, man. I personally don't.
Don't you know the legacy characters are disposable now?
Mind you, John Carpenter only wanted to make one Michael Myers movie back in 1978, and as of 2025, there are currently 13 Halloween flicks, likely with another one coming out sometime in the future. In fact, with the excitement over the recently announced video game, I would be shocked if they didn't make a Halloween 14 at some point. Franchises are simply too popular to die off. Scream is certainly one of them. In terms of the final act being different, well, if Gale does reveal a ghost face early on, that would put the rest of our ghost faces, assuming that there's multiple of them, into total panic mode. What if instead of the typical grand finale that we usually get with a Scream film where our characters take off the masks and reveal who they are to Sidney Prescott, the ghost faces who still remain hidden resort to plan B. That could be kidnapping one of Sidney's kids to bring her out to some discreet location to then kill her, or maybe they just simply flee the scene. Get the heck out of Dodge. I honestly wouldn't mind a cowardice resolution like that. All of the ghost faces are a bunch of losers who would realistically react this way if they were thwarted so heavily.
Let me guess, the movies made you doing? No, it was the message board. I was radicalized.
Also, if this theory is true, the Scream 7 third act would have to be something different. If we revealed one of the killers, there's a likelihood that we could figure out who the other person is, or other people. What if the third act for Scream 7 is simply a manhunt? Everyone's hunting down the last ghost face trying to figure out where they're at. Now that's the mystery. Or it could make the twist even more shocking to see which two characters aligned themselves together to create an ultimate bloodbath murder spree. Either way, it would totally change up the third act with a little more space to do some crazy misdirection that we definitely did not see coming or weren't prepared for. I am very into that.
I'm actually glad I get a chance to redeem myself for not calling the killers last time. It's fine.
Oh boy, we've got ourselves a plethora of Scream 7 rumors to talk a little bit about today, including some spicy plot details, more information on that secret unannounced cameo, and the fate of the Meeks Martin twins. Ooh! Let's talk a little bit about it. We are going to talk about a bunch of crazy rumors today, so before we dive into the Screamussy, I want to put one big disclaimer out there to take this video with a grain of salt. Today's talking points come from third-party sources, except for one big thing at the end that came straight from the the delicious lips of Matthew Lillard. And let me tell you, that fella's got a purty mouth. Kicking this off, we may have some new juicy info on the secret cameo that is yet to be announced in Scream 7, one of the bigger rumors floating around about the flick. We already know that Matthew Lillard, Scott Foley, David Arquette, and probably Skeet Ulrich are coming back, but there's allegedly one more character from the past that should be coming back to haunt this franchise yet again. So our friends on Twitter, Scream News and Jude Jarjora, say it's someone on the board from Scream 6 here, likely referring to another past Ghostface. This conversation gets a whole lot juicier, however, considering a new video that has surfaced online. On her horror page, Kerr Kills, comedian Kirsten Michelle reveals an interesting conversation that she had with some Paramount execs regarding the new Scream film. She talks about how they needed her Scream franchise knowledge for an upcoming show that plans to riff off of the franchise a little bit. During the meeting, one of the execs nearly revealed another Scream 7 cameo to her, but was swiftly stopped. Kerr's conspiracy theory, as she says, is that it's Drew Barrymore. She thinks that the show that she was brought in to essentially talk about was something relating to the Casey Becker actress. If this is the case, maybe Scream 7 is going to flash back all the way to the opening scene of the original Scream, seeing that famous opening from the perspective of our two killers, Billy and Stu. This could also explain why Roman is involved. As we learned in Scream 3, he was the one to put all of this into motion in the first place. That could be how we learned something new about that fateful night that we didn't know before. Maybe Stu's sister that we just learned about, Leslie Mocker, overheard some sort of conversation that maybe she shouldn't have. She's held on to this secret for years and it turned her into a killer. That's just a silly example though. Or is it? Drew Barrymore has already been involved with this new wave of Scream films, voicing the principal in Scream 5.
Attention Panthers, a reminder that all classes and school activities are canceled tomorrow.
So this wouldn't be totally out of left field for her to come back and reprise the role of Casey Becker. I'm pretty sure Drew has even said multiple times that she would love to return to the series in some sort of weird way. We also have some new plot details from insider Jude Jarjora, who is once again talking about an early Ghostface unmasking from a sharp-tongued survivor. I think he's clearly talking about Gale here, who's going to score an early Ghostface unmasking. Major W. Gale. Jude also says that the new teen characters will first appear in front of Sydney's coffee shop. This is likely because Sydney's daughter Tatum is working there. Maybe they're there to meet up, link up. What are the kids saying nowadays? I don't know. I'm gonna be 27 in a week. I feel old. Something else that's interesting about this coffee shop scene is that we may be seeing our first red herring there. According to my buddy Critical Overlord, a scary looking character named Kyle will appear there and order some coffee. It's also interesting to note that this is a non-speaking supporting role, which is odd. Definitely something suspicious happening there.
Don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious.
Also, isn't it kind of sweet that Sydney named her daughter Tatum? You know, named after her best friend from high school, who died after her neck hilariously snapped in that garage door. That scene is so funny, man. They use this cartoonish sound effect that makes me laugh every single time. Speaking of Tatum 2.0, her introductory scene here features a bit of friction between her and her mother. I've been speculating for a long time now that Scream 7 was going to focus a lot on Sydney and Tatum's relationship. It sounds like we're getting that typical plot line where a teenager character is like, "Mom, I want to go out to the party on Friday night. Darren's gonna be there." And her mom is all like, "Don't do that. It's a dumb idea. You're staying in." And then she goes out anyways, you know, as teenagers do. Will this lead to Ghostface chasing after her and potentially getting a little stabby. This is a Drew Barrymore knife. Everything in this apartment is Scream. Finally, Gale, Chad, and Mindy are all staying at Sid's house while in town. Is Gale the reason that Chad and Mindy are in this flick in the first place? I don't know. Speaking of the twins, however, they might be in peril in this new installment, as we just got a new scoop from Scream News. According to them, Chad and Mindy are part of a big, intense sequence, while Gale and Sydney are working on trapping Ghostface. Circling back to that first point, this sounds like how Gale is going to be able to unmask a Ghostface, which is no easy task. I mean, this is something that has technically never happened before in the franchise. One of the survivors taking off the Ghostface mask, unveiling one of the killers before we even get to the third act. This could make for an entirely fresh formula for the back half of the film too, with the remainder of the Ghostfaces scrambling as their original plan was totally thwarted. With the way this scoop is worded, however, it does make me worry that maybe one of the twins is gonna bite it here. It certainly won't be Chad though. It's already been confirmed that he's coming back as a cyborg. Pincushion 9000. I kid, of course. Seriously though, I do hope we get the emotional death of some survivor here. I hate to agree with Amber of all characters, but killing someone who's survived before in the past makes a new installment very significant and, well, has stakes. Whether that's Gale, Chad, Mindy, and not Sydney, I'm excited to see it. Finally, we have an update from the wet, slick tongue of Matthew Lillard. During a panel at Silver Screen Con, the Stu Macher actor talked a little bit about his involvement in the new installment. After recounting the story of how Kevin Williamson personally called him up and asked him to return for the new film, he goes on to say this.
It's not gonna ruin the franchise. That's the good news. I don't think.
Now, I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy Loomis here. I definitely do not want to sound that way, but it always worries me a little bit when you have people who are working on an upcoming film already defending it before it comes out. It's a little pet peeve of mine that I've picked up after covering movies like Halloween Ends and The Strangers Chapter 1. I look at something like this as a massive warning sign for any project. If the movie rocks, why do you feel the need to defend it before it's even released? This is not the first time that we've heard Lillard say something like this about the upcoming installment, but I'm gonna argue here that this is all just one big outlier. I think where all of this comes from is Matthew nonstop hearing Stu is alive theories from fans. I think he's worried that some fans think that they're going to illogically bring him back alive in the franchise after his death in Scream 1. I won't go on the whole tirade again, but if this movie is more focused on bringing back dead characters rather than telling an effective murder mystery in a meta slasher film, my interest is going to fade fast. I'd rather get an actual Scream movie opposed to whatever that kind of corporate slop would end up being. Sorry, not sorry. How do you guys feel about Scream 7, however? Which rumor or update was your favorite from today's video? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you all for watching, please subscribe, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.